Do you want to introduce yourself really quick? Who are you?
Sure. I'm Mineral, content creator right now. Just generally a coach. I post stuff on my YouTube channel, analysis videos, things like that. I have a podcast that I recently launched. Before this, I was a coach for the head coach of Florida Mayhem. Before that, Misfits, and before that, I was also a player for Misfits and for Luminosity Gaming. So I've been around the block when it comes to Overwatch.
I guess we will get started. So some context with what we're going for chat. We're going over the Shanghai Dragons versus the San Francisco Shock and the playoffs leading up into the finals for Stage 2. Now, this was interesting because this was the only map that the Shock lost. And Shock had not lost a single map the entire regular season. And then they're playing Shanghai, and they lose the very first map. And Shanghai plays a little bit of DPS on the last round. But we see a lot of Sombra Goats. Now, chat, you've probably kind of been familiar with the whole Sombra Goats thing of just press W or, bully this, like that sort of thing. So we're going to kind of talk about like how teams traditionally will play up against Sombra Goats, like in a standard Zenyatta Goats situation. And then I want to talk a little bit about the Shock's way of approaching it, because we can already see on your screen, they're choosing a different composition with a different set of win conditions, and one that I'm curious to see what the reasoning behind was. We're going to try and take some guesses at it and then give our opinion on whether it was a good idea or not. Because going into this map, the Shock knew that Shanghai was going to be playing Sombra Goats. I don't think there was any guess as to what they're going to be doing, especially on this map in particular. So, Mineral, I'm going to offer feedback and my own sort of analysis of things, but you are the guest, so this is primarily about what your thoughts are. So I'll kind of let you run with that. What are your thoughts based off of like Sombra Goats versus Zenyatta Goats? How do you beat it as Zen Goats? What is the win condition Sombra Goats wants to achieve, and how does normal Goats beat that?
So with Sombra Goats is obviously you're trying to work around your hacks. You can't really trade straight up with against a conventional 3-3 because you just kind of get out traded, especially if you don't have a hack, which is why you see most teams who play 3-3 against Sombra 3-3, you're just kind of you're forcing out the Sombra translocator, and then you're just going all in pretty much on the opposing team. Whereas the Sombra team wants to kite, wants to give up a little bit of space, look for hacks, and then try and farm up the EMP and roll with ultimates.
Okay, and then looking at this here, we've already seen the trade from, like, this is a Moira instead of a Zen. We've got a Hog instead of a Brig. So you're losing some of the damage output from the Zenyatta, the Discord. And then you're losing, I guess, the Brawl aspect in exchange for the Hook. Now, we know that CC is pretty good against Sombra, and Hook is a quasi-CC. I mean, it's technically CC, but it's not a CC that's quote-unquote easy to land. So my first impression is when you're running I think this would technically be called Slambulance, quad tank, is you have to win the first fight. You have to win the neutral fight, and you need to win with basically just unabated pressure. Just run them over completely. Because the threat of Hook forces the Sombra out, right? But when you no longer have Discord, it's more difficult to, I guess, poke or stage. They have their own Zen, they have their own Sombra, so the longer the fight goes, the worse of a condition that you would be in. Would you agree with that analysis, or would you not? What are your thoughts with what Shock are running here?
So I think, first of all, I think you're right. You have to win the first fight, otherwise you end up in a situation where you're probably swapping Violet and Rascal going into your retake and resetting 2 ultimates and trying to retake into a Sombra that probably is going to have the MP for that fight. Like, you're pretty much screwed, especially on control. There's so snowbally. I think if you are running Slambulance into this, what it does is, because you have so much sustain, you are able to kind of control the whole map. I can see sort of potentially Hog just kind of solo pushing and clearing this side of the map, the rest of your team clearing this side, and you should be able to gain map control pretty easily with the Slambulance. Now, I'm not sure whether they're running this as a counter to that. I'm sure that San Francisco would love to just play regular 3-3 into Sombra Goats. My guess would be that perhaps Shock is expecting something else, maybe some ding on the Pharah. I know that
they ran that weird pharmacy comp. It was like a Ryan Zarya pharmacy. It was hideous, but we have seen that on this map in particular.
And I do feel like maybe that's what they were expecting here, because if they would be running that with kind of a triple support Mercy, Pharah, Ryan Zarya, with this, that's what I think this can really shine, because again, they would have no mobility, and you can just slam into them.
Right.
You send Choi to essentially mark the Pharah and go 1 for 2 in that trade, and then the rest of you just kind of press W and win. And also, that being said, it's not impossible to win the first fight with the Slambolins against what Shanghai is running, because again, you should be able to take a lot of space. Shanghai should be giving up a lot of space. You should be able to get the first cap most of the time, but your snowballing potential isn't, I guess, as great.
Right.
Although if you do win the first fight, there are a lot of ways you can make plays. Violet can hide between fights and things like that. But that's really what I'm thinking with this, because that's also another combo that's really good if you're playing against a pharmacy, is when you do get your coalescence up, the Moira and the Diva can sort of combine, especially on maps like University, where the skybox is kind of low on the point. You can easily snipe out the combo.
Remind me who the British Roadhog is. I think he plays for the Charge. He was the World Cup, and he Kip, yes, and Kip was famous in the World Cup for like smashing those barrage combos with his hook, like again and again. And so that's something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a very good point. That's another counter. You also have, because there's no matrix either, you have so many ways to kind of counter the Pharah. So to me, I do believe that maybe they expected the Pharah, and if they don't have the Pharah, then they were like, okay, let's roll the dice with this, win the first fight, maybe win the retake, and then even when we give up control, we're probably gonna give up control while forcing out a lot of ultimates. Then we can just swap their 3 and kind of close it out. That's how I would kind of look into Shock's picks.
Okay, so looking at this though, how does Shock win this into the Sombra Goats matchup? Because we're going to be able to see how they play it. I still think the tempo has to be fast-paced, like anything into Sombra Goats, but especially has to be fast-paced, because if your Hog doesn't land a hook, you have to run them over. You have to run them over fast. Would you agree with that first fight here? Like, this is what we have to do kind of a thing?
Yeah, because on this stage specifically, it's there's not really a lot of checkpoints that you can set up to farm the Sombra ult, because that's kind of what you want to do with this comp. You want to set up checkpoints where your Sombra is at an off angle, you're pressuring, they force your Sombra away, and then you go to your next checkpoint, and then eventually you get the Sombra ult, and then you can kind of engage. But yeah, I think you just have, your tempo has to be fast. You can't afford to slow down. You don't want to let the Sombra farmer ult. So yeah, they're probably just going to try to make sure they control everything. Don't give this up, clear this, so you're. And if you clear this with maybe the Hog potentially, and the rest of your team kind of controls the point, then where does the Sombra go? She's either behind Gamsa's shield, or she's up top, where it's you can farm your ult from there, but it's not that great. Choi can potentially go and contest her a little bit as well, and you should be able to gain map control fairly easily here if you're Shocked.
Okay, we'll see how it plays out.
On this map, as it turns out, undefeated on every map at the moment here in stage 2.
Just confirming, you can pause on your end as well.
Let me try that out.
Hey, nice, perfect.
Okay, so he pats over pointer, he goes behind, and Shock chooses to clear that side.
Now Hog is missing. Okay, so they split. They sent, I guess Hog would be coast side, stair side.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's interesting. That's a very interesting wrinkle, and that's kind of why Shock is number 1, because they throw in these little wrinkles. Like you see the 3-3, and that's why they send the whole team into that little room, because you saw as soon as they saw the whole team there, no one is looking main anymore. Rascal is presumably trailing the play over there, like he's staying. Staying there on his own. And when the whole team goes there, you don't think about it. It's kind of the same concept. If you remember the Gladiators, what they did in the playoffs last year when they left Shore and Spawn as Brig, then he swapped, they flipped the map, and then he just shot the backline as a Widow. Exact same concept here, but with different heroes. But yeah, you send your whole team here, which means you're funneling Shanghai onto the point, and then Hog can just flank.
Perfect.
Very, very smart. Yeah. And no one is looking, like you can see.
No one's looking.
And it's especially since you don't expect the Hog either.
No, you don't. They probably think they still have Brig. So now they just W and it's over.
Yeah.
And that's what Shock needed.
It's especially because Ding doesn't get a chance to farm anything.
18%.
Exactly. So now you can potentially milk the clock there for a really long time if you're shocked. And Violet already has his ult, so now you can just all in.
Yep.
As soon as he gets it, you can all in with the coalescence.
Right.
And
You
again.
you want to win 2 fights with this with the comp
Yeah.
Shock is running.
Yeah. And you see, Ding is farming at an off angle, but
And they're going. They're not going to
Yeah.
stop.
yeah. And that's important as
Surprised
well
they're not
because
still pushing actually, because you're seeing an HP now. Obviously, they're pushing into a choke, which normally you wouldn't want to do this. But we're looking at HP here in Shanghai, and I'm looking at Violet. I'm surprised they didn't keep pushing here as the shot. You've got Rascal on a pretty good angle. Okay. We'll make
but basically the point that I wanted to, because I can kind of maybe
sure.
still talk about it while and we'll show it on screen. What Shanghai wanted to do, like they set up their Sombra behind. He started farming, and immediately San Francisco pushed away from there, and then Ding can't farm anymore. But what Ding most likely, what the Sombra team wants to do is you want to place your translator in a way where, because you know you're going to kite, you know you won't be trading, you will be kiting, so your translator should be placed in a position where as soon as you translate it out, as soon as Shock pushes, you are behind the shield and you can help kind of relieve that pressure. And I think that's exactly what happened there.
So in other words, you're saying, so did you get the link that I sent you?
Yeah, let me see if I can show it.
It's not playing now, but it's paused. So chat, let me just draw really quick. What he's saying is basically if Team Red is here, Red Shield, and then Team Blue is here. Let's say we have Red Sombra here, okay? So Sombra's applying pressure. Team Blue goes, oh, well, we're just gonna, like, if they can't bully her out, they're just gonna press W as the Sombra's pathing before the Sombra decloaks, maybe as the Sombra decloaks. They're gonna push forward here, okay? So Sombra, then all of a sudden now Team Blue is no longer accessible with Sombra. So instead of translocating to, over here or over here, we want the Sombra to be able to translocate back behind her own team's shield, so that if she doesn't get any backline pressure, she's still in a position that she can contribute to the fight. So there's never really a long situation where Team Red is taking a 5v6. Because Sombra obviously doesn't have as much frontline pressure as a Diva does. But there's still something, there's still damage there. And if you remove the Sombra entirely from the fight, if she's translocating out from the back to left or right or wherever, then she's out of the fight. And the Team Blue will take that opportunity to then run over Team Red. Am I understanding what you were saying correctly?
Exactly. And it also makes it a little harder for Super to swing, because if they've already used their bubble and Ding is just holding right click for the hack, then he might get hacked, so he can't really swing.
And
so
a hack Ryan is dead.
It's kind of a good way to relieve pressure. I think it might be fixed now.
Okay, sounds good. We will keep going.
Actually, it's also a big thing to consider, the fact that there is no Diva on the side of Shanghai. It also gives you a little more value out of the Moira, because you can't eat the damage orbs or the healing orbs.
Right. Okay, we seem to have a problem with the actual Twitch link, because now the Twitch link is not working at all. It's stuck in the play. So I'm gonna have to skip forward to like 8:34 and hope it doesn't have problems. Yep, there's actually a dead zone in a Twitch link, guys. It's not letting me skip to 8:34. Give me a second. So I don't think it was even q.gg. I think it was the actual, there's a corruption in the actual. So this fight, nobody will ever know what happened in this fight.
Well, they pressed Coalescence and they won.
They pressed it with Coalescence and they won. But the Twitch link is corrupted, so it's not working. Okay, we'll move on to the next fight. So we could pretty much assume that's unusual. Choi Open was demeched. Uh-oh. I think we actually have a fat finger here. So I'm gonna look at Choi Open, 74%, 75%. He gets a boop on Gamsu right here, and he basically gets instantly 25% ult charge, whatever. But he presses Q, and you can see the bomb.
Yeah, that's definitely a fat finger.
That's a fat finger, and that's tough because there was a potential here of Shock winning the third fight. Now.
Yeah.
How likely that would have been, I don't know. We could have potentially seen like a Grav Hog combo, maybe force the EMP and then push into the next fight with a bomb available to win once you've made the swap. Regardless, this is awful. This is awful. That's tough. And there's a fat finger. And you got to look at this now and you go, Shock do not win this next fight. There's no way. So if you're Shock here, do you take this opportunity to speed back and swap Violet? Because I mean, you have to understand, like, think about how much space are you willing to give, because you know Shanghai is going to be using EMP this fight, and you're probably going to lose. So do you go, okay, do we want the 20-25% ult charge that we can maybe get from Zen before we just immediately die? Because spawns are pretty close in this map.
Yeah, I think you potentially have that opening just because of how late you got the last kill. You could potentially you could swap him to a Zen. You could also swap him to an Ana potentially, because there's no matrix on the side of the Dragons, and you can win by just hitting a big nade, right? So you could potentially do that, sure, because I don't think you can really. There's no real win condition you can have by going super early in the choke with your grav, because even if you grav, Deng is going to be able to EMP, like counter EMP, and then you can't pin that anymore.
Right. Well, now that bomb is gone, it's over. There's nothing to aggress with. The only way that you win this is if you have a rally, a bomb, a beat, well, not necessarily a beat, but something you can force and catch the Shanghai. But now Grav's not an aggressive ult. So
I'm just looking to milk as much time as possible and force out as many ults as possible to set myself up for a better retake here if I'm Shock.
Okay.
Will build the EMP. They have the Transcends, which is arguably a much stronger support ultimate than Violet's Coalescence that he might get in a longer.
And because the bomb went out, you want to use your grav first probably to force out some of those ultimates, and you can just throw it out. So you want to be first and then force them to react, but you also need to spread for the EMP, so it's a little tricky.
So this is good. This is good. We're grabbing. You're gonna get trance, and so rally in. They grav. They trance, and we're probably going to see EMP as well. This is like best case scenario for Shock, because even if you lose this, like you said, you traded 1 for 3. I don't agree with the rally usage. I don't agree with the rally usage here, definitely, if nothing else.
Yeah, so because there's multiple ways to view it. So this is one of the reasons why against going back and swapping with Violet, because you wouldn't be able to hold this corner and force the ults this early. You would have to give up significantly more space if you went back to swap him. And the more space you give up, the less space you have to hide for the EMP and for the rest of the ults, right? But because Super was holding that forward corner, you can see Moth is on point, you know, and they're just very, very spread out, and that's kind of what you want. And like you say, the rally isn't really necessary, especially when you know the grav is going to come out and the grav is going to get sniped, and you're going to have to trance the grav anyway, probably. So
okay. Now what's bad here is it looks like I missed this. Gamsu shattered, and he actually caught 2. So now this is flipped. So they did invest another ult, yes, but you could now Shanghai can legitimately win this fight without using EMP. And that's concerning. That's 1. That's 2. Yikes. So that went from being good for Shock to being not very good for Shock.
I mean, it's not disastrous. You still trade 1 ult for 3, but ideally you want to end up in a situation where Rascal gets his ult off as well, and you get another one. Just one. You need the beat or the grav or the EMP, one of those. That's ideal, because Rascal's swapping anyway, so you want to get rid of that.
Right, you might as well use it to force something. And so, like you said, Rascal's not going to stay in Hog. You can't really retake without a Brig very easily. Okay, so there's a swap to Brig, there's a swap to Zen. Shock doesn't have a win condition here. There's just there's no win condition whatsoever for Shock. There's nothing you can aggress with without it just getting immediately canceled. Shatter is not a really great first ult. It's more a better follow-up. So we'll see.
We will see Rascal swap over to the Brigida. The Shanghai Dragons are set up with another grav here.
Yeah, I agreed. I think they would have to be really sloppy.
So Shock doesn't have a win condition here. You need to force EMP. You would like if you could force a grab too, but that's not likely. How do you play this as Shock? Do you play this fast? Do you just try and get the EMP over with as quickly as possible?
Yeah, pretty much. You know, if Moth could somehow, you know, the fact that there isn't like a shatter follow-up means that maybe if Moth could get his beat off in time, maybe you could get the grab as well. I think if there was a shatter, it might be a little harder.
I think if you can avoid getting, if Shoyobin and Moth can avoid getting EMP, there's a chance at Shock.
There's a chance.
There's a chance. Because chat, Shoyoben wants to avoid getting grabbed or EMP'd, because if he can avoid getting EMP'd, that 2 seconds of Matrix can provide enough time so that Mott's barrier can actually counter the EMP. Barrier by itself is not good enough to beat EMP unless you have something else to bring to the table, like a rally plus pre-rally plus beat, etc. So we'll see.
So, best case scenario, you dodge, those two guys dodge the grab, you beat to force the grab, and then hopefully hit a shatter to hit to force their beat. So if you can trade these 2 ults for the 3 ults of Shanghai Dragons, that's best case scenario for Shock, but it's going to be hard to pull off.
Because with Sombra to Goats, you're looking to, okay, we EMP this fight, we grab next fight. If they have to use both to win a fight, that's problematic for Shanghai.
Yeah, you need to cycle those 2.
So they are forcing this one. They do counter beat. So the counter beat is a little wasted there.
But this is, but it's still fine because they fall back and the only one person dies, so you don't feed all ults. You know, if this was just if San Francisco go in, let's just dry fight and die out, then Luffy farms a trance off of this wipe. But because they don't get wiped, they only give up 1 kill. It's still not too bad.
And it was early too. We're talking 20, even after the Diva stagger, it's only 20%. That's fine. I also chat, I want to direct your attention towards Rascal. They anticipated this EMP because they see that the Shanghai telegraphs this pretty hard. So they're already pushing forward. Look at Violet's HP, chat. He has armor. Rascal sees them pushing forward and he pre-armors Violet because with the EMP it's going to cancel the shields, but he's still going to have the 150, something like 100 HP, 75 HP over shield from the armor pack. So there's a greater chance of Violet surviving this. So unfortunate, but heads up play from Rascal.
Very, very telegraphed.
Your eyes are looking beautiful this morning.
Need to be way more patient there if you're Shanghai.
Because now, so unfortunately, the unfortunate thing though is that now without the beat, even though it was used to kind of minimize the damage of the EMP and like reset the fight faster, you'd still go into this fight and if I'm Shock here, I think I literally just press W onto DM and force either beat or eat the graph. I think that you just need to run in and as fast as possible try and force DM to make a mistake or force them to defensively beat to avoid their Zarya getting killed. I don't see enough ults on the side of Shock. Would you agree with that? What do you think that Shock could do into this fight?
So again, I think because you see Ding recalls or translocates super far away from the fight, so you have to give up a ton of space for free with Shanghai. And even though there's the grab on the side of Shanghai and the beat and all that stuff, you still have to worry about Choi's Matrix, and you're still playing around your Sombra. So there is a chance for Shock to just pressure hard, try and force the Sombra away, and you should be able to get the grab out regardless. But basically, you should be able to take a lot of space for free here if you're Shock. If you manage to eat the grab and hit a shatter, then it's still winnable because maybe Violet farms up his trance fast enough and you can do stuff.
And hitting a shatter is always a wild card. Maybe you shatter Coma. Maybe you shatter Luffy and kill him before the beat comes on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll if you trade shatter for those 2 ults for Shock, then you're in good.
Right, and you'll go in next fight with the trance. Ding will still not have EMP. You'll have one in that next fight. There's a hack on a Shoyoben. There's the grab. I don't think this is I don't think this is winnable from Shock.
Oh.
Okay.
And that's why Shock weren't able to take space because Choi gets hacked, and as soon as he gets hacked, then you can just eat the grab.
Right. So getting hacked means, like you said, you could just throw the grab out, and also kind of loses some of the forward pressure. So good news for Shock is that we've got 32% on EMP, and the bad news is that unfortunately Sinatra's only 50% on his grab, but the good thing is you can go into this fight, you can play it aggressively. EMP is likely not going to be on the table until next fight. So if Shock does well with their neutral here, they can theoretically win this fight. Now, the wild card here is the beat. Okay, the beat is still something that we have to look at, and Luffy's close to trance. So despite the fact that, these fights have been fast, they're losing them fast, it's almost too fast, because the problem is now Shanghai is still at an old advantage. They've thrown EMP, they've thrown Grav, Shock is still at an ult disadvantage.
Because Shanghai only used one ult for each fight, and Super hasn't been able to use get his shatter off to force a second ult, because that's what would have sort of tilted the advantage in Shock's favor if they could have gotten that shatter off somehow and gotten a 2-for-1 trade.
Okay.
88%.
And that's the second time we've seen this hack come
But it's still definitely doable. Now they don't have to worry about an EMP. They don't have to worry about the Zarya ult, so they can just take a lot of space basically for free. Yeah, they shove out the Sombra.
Okay, so we've got Trance, we've got Shatter, Violet's 1 HP. Oof.
It gets the trance.
Manage to stay alive.
Okay, so the little off angle split there is kind of neat. I like that. Like, that's kind of interesting. So you've basically got Rascal puppy guarding Violet on the flank here. You've got pressure forward here, and they're splitting this way. Yeah, I mean, it's unusual. And basically, I guess the assumption is that if we keep our Brig here, our Zen can kind of get a good off angle and just apply consistent pressure without getting bullied out.
Yeah,
just kind of an off angle pressure.
Another thing is, like, if you can clear this flank, then the Sombra can only really shoot you from the high ground, and then there's fewer angles to worry about, basically.
Okay. That makes sense.
But you can see actually DM pushing into there to try and finish the kill.
Yeah,
it's really greedy.
Yeah,
and that's why they kind of, because in general, and Shanghai is pushing here, like they should not be pushing forward here, because you want to kind of, so you have off angles on two sides if you're Shanghai, but you're pushing into Shock.
That doesn't
right?
make sense. You want to bait them in so you can establish your concave. So you're right. This is a mistake. So the problem is Shock is holding their ground here and here, right?
Yeah.
If Shanghai establishes Sombra here, Zarya here, whatever, and they kind of, like you said, they back off, that opens up angles for your hack, for your higher charge Zarya to land in significant damage. You can get more value out of your map control. Whereas if you push forward, well, unless your concave is able to push with you, which doesn't really make sense, it doesn't work. And especially, basically, Shanghai is like, give them space, give the open space.
So also, if you pause as well, so in this situation, Youngjin should also be just helping DM on the flank to try and control that, because then what you said, that could potentially be possible, where the Sombra goes all the way around towards their main, your Zarya can potentially pressure forward, but that's also still very risky, like it is very risky. You can get speed boosted on, but yeah, like DM needs the help on that side, and clearly that's not the plan for them, because if you like scroll back a frame, Dink isn't going for a long flank, he just drops behind shield. If you'll see it in like a frame or two.
Yeah.
Just after he recalls. So clearly the plan isn't to like flank them and push them forward, right? So you just want to keep those. Right. And in this situation, if Youngjin helps DM a little bit, then obviously if Shock wants to control that area, they have to commit more resources. And if they push towards that, then Ding gets an off angle again, right? Then you set up a crossfire if you're
right. Okay.
Yeah.
The trance.
Does manage to stay alive. The trance going to be on.
But this is kind of what Shock wanted to do. They didn't want this fight. They, like, if Shanghai theoretically gives more space here, doesn't take a lot of poke outside of their Sombra, forces the Shock to touch the point to contest, and then you could theoretically beat on top of them and rush on top of them. Like, there was a win condition in that regard. But now, like, the pick is, this is really bad for Shanghai, because this means that, with no Grav, obviously, with no EMP still not being available, Shock will probably win this fight, and they could theoretically win this fight without using any ults. Which means going into next fight, you'll have EMP, you'll have double support or triple support ult, but they will too. They're going to have their trance, they're going to have their rally, they're going to have their Grav, they're going to have their shatter, and they might even have their bomb. So this is not the situation that Shanghai wants to be in.
Yeah, it's completely unacceptable to lose your Zarya when you have 3 support ults up, and then Gamsu tries to salvage the fight by throwing out a shatter as well.
Into the shield.
It just,
Biggest thing I can tell Reinhardt's of the tier 3, tier 4, tier 2 level, never shatter shield. There will almost always be an availability or an opportunity later in the fight. Like, follow it up with something else. Like, look for the Zarya without personal on an off angle. Use the bomb, wait for the Rein shield to break, wait for the Brig to get greedy. Like, there's so many opportunities to shatter and Goats later in fights. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and also unless you hit the shatter on Violet, like even if you hit like a 4-man shatter but you don't hit Violet, you still don't kill anything because he just trances and you'll lose anyway. I mean, but then again, that would be a good trade.
trade,
if you,
right.
Yeah, but still, it's a very high risk.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because you have to understand that they also now they have the EMP coming up, but they have no shatter, and that's one of the big things. Like the way you usually trade ults, especially if you're pushing into these support ults of shock, you would probably EMP. Violet would hide and trance, and then you would delay and look for a shatter angle a couple of seconds later, because that's how it's going to be. Like everyone's going to be spread out. You're going to EMP, Violet trances, and then everyone groups up a little more, and you shatter towards the end of the hack duration. And while Reinhardt still can't raise his shield, and then you have this little window where the trance is off and everyone's on the ground, you can potentially kill them, or force out another ult.
So you EMP duration is from here to here. You don't shatter here. You shatter here, because if you hit the, the EMP is here, the trance is going to be right here, right? So the trance duration is going to go from here to here, but if you shatter here, the shatter duration is going to go from here to here. And this little window right here is where you're going to be able to get kills with no trance. So Chad is asking, just don't shatter shield. Okay, the thing was with Goats is the shield pressure is immense. And despite it being, I guess, on paper, a clump composition, like Mineral was saying, as the fight kind of goes on, people split off. And opportunities will present themselves, either through the shield being low, Zarya's getting greedy, Divas on angles. Like, you'll have opportunities to land shatters later on. And especially when we're talking about EMP shatter, which, is an option if you're running Sombra Goats, that's almost an unstoppable combo. Almost. And that is something that should almost always be on the table or be planned ahead, and instead Gamsu just shatters the shield. There was no boop setup, there was no bash setup, there's no diva boop setup, so you could display. There's a lot of ways to displace their Ryan and land your own shatter. There's no speed in past the shield and shatter. There's no bash shatter. There was no EMP shatter. It was just, I'm going to shatter into the shield. And that in Goats is almost always unacceptable.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now you don't really have that play.
Right. So going into this fight here, how does San Francisco Shock win this? How do you win this round as the Shock?
So you need to obviously make sure that Violet does, because you don't have another 66 regroup really with 85% on the side of the Dragons, so you have to win this. Violet obviously can't get EMP'd. Snarder is close to his grab as well, so he should look to try and grab for, like, you just want to try and get your ults out, like before, and force Shanghai to react. If you can force them to use the EMP sort of defensively to peel, and you can spread out enough, then that's how you probably win.
I think it's important to, like you were saying, is going in aggressively. It's almost easier. I think that what you said earlier made really sense. Like, if you're giving up map control, it's harder to like play around EMP. But if you're forcing them, okay, they're engaging on us. Now the second that they even get closest, we're going to run at them with our rally or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to EMP, and that gives our Zen so much map to hide with and get a trance off effectively. That it makes it actually easier. If you play aggressively, it's easier to play defensively when you're playing into this kind of a situation.
Yeah. But on the side of the Dragons as well, you have to remember that they still hold on to their 3 support ults. So even if you rally, they could potentially hold EMP, rally themselves, and then start pushing. And then it gets really tricky for Shock, because then they're like, okay, we need to grab first. They're going to grab first, but then the trance is going to come out. So, and then potentially, then they could potentially EMP, and then to stop the pin. And there's just like things can potentially happen, and you still have the beat. So it's going to be interesting to see how this fight plays out.
Okay, we will see.
Next thing that the Shock need to do is to guarantee Violet is not hit by that EMP. Violet needs to stay back. If he can keep his team healed through the EMP, you see the counter grab come through.
So they're quite spread out. You can get it really big. You can obviously get the front line here. So they lead with Graph.
Okay.
And rally.
Okay, so I guess the rally is probably just so they don't immediately die before the trance comes in. Probably specifically for Sinatra more so than anybody else. We'll see what Shanghai does to counter this.
It also protects them in case a counter EMP comes out now. You already have your rally running, and you have a higher. And then if your trance comes out after to counter that, like we talked about before, it gives you more time to get your trance off. Like it gives Violet a larger window because Sinatra might not die and all the other players might not die because you're getting the rally ticks.
Because EMP does not cancel rally.
Exactly.
Okay, so we will see. Sinatra, by the way, you're expecting a personal bubble here. It's gonna happen. He likes to split the grabs of this personal bubble. And there it is.
Yeah.
Oof.
And focuses.
I love it, man. I love it when so many ults are used and Sinatra pressing a cooldown wins the fight. You use like 7. I mean, how many Goats fights have we seen, especially in the finals, where you're like 8, 9, 10 ults are traded, no kills, and then Sinatra presses a cooldown, and then he gets like a kill or 2. So crazy, man.
And they go super fast as well. Like ideally, you want to give like Cheyenne wants to get Dink set up, scout out. Where's the Zen? Where do I want to go? And Shock doesn't give them that opening.
No.
They just go and
And where's Ding? The question is where's Ding? Was he pathing still? Like you had said, like if we catch them while their Sombra's rotating, they're not ready to set up. There is that window where we could take that 5v6. So crazy. There's EMP. There's a trance. They double support ult. Well, why? Okay, why did
triple
Coma...
support ult?
So I'm trying to see why Coma beats. Yeah, so that was a wasted beat. So I think it was like, oh, DM is dying, but DM's going to die regardless.
It was one of those. This is our plan, and they don't have a plan if San Francisco engages first.
And like you said,
and
triple support ult.
Yeah, and especially when you're retaking map control, as the retaking team, you need a plan from what you're gonna try to do, and in case San Francisco goes first, what are we doing? Who's using their ult first? Who's if they grab us first, I'm gonna trance, and then we're gonna EMP a little later. Instead of popping everything at the same time.
So well played from the Shock. They will survive this. They still have bomb. We'll probably see bomb momentarily. There's a shatter.
Okay, they get super out. Oh.
There's the aggressive beat. Bomb's no longer necessary. You just press W. Bomb probably wasn't a great idea at full HP either way. Okay. So yeah, Shock just pressed W when it was needed, and they caught Shanghai without a plan. So Shock goes into that map at a disadvantage because they're on a comp that's really not great. Because yeah, you can win the first 2 fights, but you're expecting normal Goats to probably win the first neutral fight anyway, unless the Sombra Goats team is just better, right? Which, Shanghai is not going to beat Shock and Goats unless they screw up. So they managed to win 2 fights off of that, and that was good. Shanghai plays the fights after that very well because, like you said, they're winning off of single ultimates. But then they lose because they set up a concave. They don't play the concave correctly. DM feeds. Gamsu just wastes shatter completely. And then they go into the next fight, and they just, like you said, they didn't have a plan for what if Shock just runs at us with an ultimate. And they didn't have a plan. They triple support ult. They still lose somebody through the triple support ult. They don't get value out of the EMP. I mean, they forced a trance, but they weren't able to get a play out of it because they didn't have shatter. And that was that. So, okay. We will skip forward a little bit.
And that's what happens. If you're not prepared before the fight and the enemies go first, then it's up to every single player to make the right read and to interpret the situation. And in that situation, everyone just panicked and pressed Q. Like 4 players pressed Q at the same time. Like that should never ever happen at this level of play.
Right. Okay, so this is a little bit odd for me. So we've got Shanghai running the Zen Sombra. Okay, San Francisco Shock is running a halfway quasi half this composition. We're running Winston Moira Goats. So we've seen them run what my team runs a lot of this comp. They protect the Sombra. You swap your Zarya for Sombra, really good into DPS compositions, especially anything of 2/2/2. It's even decent into triple. But that's not what they're running here. They're running the Zarya. So this feels like, okay, we're not sure what they're going to be running, so we're going to run something in between. I don't see Shock rolling out on Zarya if they're running DPS, especially considering we've seen them be so inclined to run that Sombra variant. So what's the Shock's mindset behind this? Because if you're looking to get to the perfect composition, then you wouldn't roll out something halfway, would you? Because you're going to go back to spawn and swap anyway. You would try and guess, and if you don't guess correctly, you go back and swap. Because we see the Shock swap after this. They go back to spawn and swap. But I'm guessing, like, what is the purpose of this composition?
So I think, like you said, if you're playing, like if you're playing as DPS compositions with Hammond and stuff like that, then yeah, you want to have this comp, but with a Sombra. But since Dragons showed the Sombra Goats last fight, they probably don't expect it. They think it's quite likely that they might play it as well. But it's also pretty likely that they play some kind of Pharah variation. But not necessarily like a 3 DPS variation, but rather maybe like a 2-2 comp or something. So in that case, I can see this composition potentially working. Also, if they are playing this comp that the Shanghai is doing now, then Sinatra maybe doesn't have to go back. Maybe he can farm a little bit of energy before the fight starts.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I you know, it's funny is actually they swapped for a Ryan here. I don't even think the Winston's that bad into what Shanghai is running, especially on this map. Like when you don't have a diva, that's really one of the deterrents to a Winston, right? So, you know, one of the dangers of running a Winston is divas, the booster boop, the high damage at close range, being able to matrix her Brig Zarya when they get bum rushed. Shanghai doesn't have that anymore. So couldn't Shock theoretically take map control as normal and just press W just as effectively with a Winston? Or would you be more concerned with, I guess, the, you know, not having that Rhine to you know, you lose the fight, maybe eventually you lose the fight and then you end up having to swap Rhine anyway? Is that a concern?
Yeah, I'm also very concerned about potentially losing the fight with this comp and then having to swap Violet and Super. And then you're not only pushing into an EMP, you also have your Reinhardt and your flex support at an old disadvantage, and then it's going to be very easy for Shanghai to snowball. So I think you see that comp that they're running, you just want to go 3-3.
Can you explain really quick to chat why is Winston bad on retakes, like on attack in most circumstances? Why into a Rhine, I guess? Why would you say that?
Well, it's just very difficult to take map control. So when you're playing against a Reinhardt and you're put it this way. If you're the Brigade, if you're the 3 supports on the Shock side and you're retaking map control, it's very easy for the Reinhardt to kind of stuff you at choke points, and you can't really move past him. And even if the Winston jumps in, it's going to be difficult for you to kind of push in with him. You can't really jump up on high ground and zap slowly, because then the Reinhardt composition can just push into you. And so you kind of have to jump in, try and split the team and take space together. That's the only way you really get value out of your Brig, right? But if you're playing with this type of composition, you don't really have enough damage as opposed to kind of burst a target either. Even though there isn't, you don't have the damage mitigation on the side of Dragons with the lack of Diva, it's still going to be difficult, especially like you say on retakes. It's going to be hard because you can't really abuse high ground. You can't really ping pong up and down, and it's hard for your backline to take space as well.
And now this is where things get fun. Now, I've not really studied this match map, but I do know that super swaps, so they go back and they swap.
Also another thing is, unless it's a map where you can get a ton of value from environmental kills, you're also giving up a lot of potential with your Graviton. If you grab and they have any of their support ults, they can easily counter that. The bomb isn't really reliable, and you can't really you can't pin, right? You can't pin a Brig. That's what the biggest combo has been.
So they are going to swap. Now this had me scratching my head. They stay in the Moira. So running Moira here, you have to win the first fight, kind of similar to what we talked about last time, because old economy becomes a question. And where, you know, you see Sombra Goats versus Zenyatta Goats. Sombra, the longer the fight goes on, the Sombra Goats team does better, because, yeah, they might be as good in the brawl, they don't have the Matrix, but they have higher damage, they have more valuable ultimate to win the fight. But now you don't have the damage, so you don't have any strength in poke whatsoever from the Shock's end. You have to just press W and run over to Shanghai here.
So I think
we've not really seen this, though. We've not really seen a team purposely stay on Moira going into Sombra Goats, at least that I've seen. I mean, it has its strengths, but it has very glaring weaknesses, obviously, too.
Yeah. So I think in Shock's defense, I think what this allows you to do is Rascal doesn't really have to worry a lot about his flex support, because usually when you give up this high ground that Shanghai is standing on, it's very easy to kind of get a discord on the enemy Zen, and then you and your Sombra can kill him pretty easily. And you can't really path top if you're Shock here because of the boop potential. It's very, very risky.
Right.
So you can really only path through main or through your house, and then
the threat of the discorded on the Zen is definitely a threat.
Exactly, and it's just kind of difficult to take space. Whereas Moira, what Moira gives you here is you do get on point. You can play a tighter angle, and you have a ton of sustain. So even if you're getting poked from the top, you're gonna out pressure on point. You're gonna force the Reinhardt to drop, and when he drops, then you can go all in without ever having to worry about your backline. So on top of that, you said like we lack a little bit of damage, but again, there's no diva on the side of the Dragons, which means Violet can use a damage orb to kind of add a lot of AoE damage and farm up his ult. Like that should still be the first ult of the fight, even if the fight drags out beyond the first bubble trade.
So really quick, chat. The big thing is like if we're pretending Shock is coming from like this side because it's visible. So if Shock wants to path up through high ground here, like you said, the threat of having like a Lucio wall riding here, you know, a Diva booster boop, they double boop them, you're off the edge, right? That's the problem with pathing into high ground. So you go into main, you're like, okay, well, we just go into here, we stick our Ryan like right here, and then our Zen can kind of poke here. But then, like you said, their Zen will be able to look over Ryan shield, discord your Zen, Sombra decloaks, their Zen shooting, and they will kill your Zen. So that's a threat too. Even if you were to go into something like Halls, I think we've seen some teams will put their Ryan Zarya here, which I think is pretty good. And then you could put your backline here. You've still got the threat of, you know, the high ground discord, and then now you've got Sombra can go from this angle or from this angle and shoot your Zen and the back or in the side there too. So the threat of pushing into that Sombra is more difficult, and with the Moira, it's better, like you said, to be able to retake that space, and then whatever space the Shanghai tries to hold to prevent point from being capped, they're going to lose it, or should lose it, with the Moira Goats, just running them over. So, question, Spilo, how does Winston create space if the enemy team does not have a backline? Mineral, do you want to answer that question?
Wait, what was the question?
The question was, how does Winston create space if the enemy team doesn't have a backline? So I guess, how does Winston create space in Goats, or versus Rhine Goats?
So he means because they're death balling.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like Winston Goats versus Rhine Goats. How does a Winston create space?
Well, so you're trying to basically usually it's just a race for you to try and get your ultimate as soon as possible. Then obviously with your ult you can jump in, spread the enemy team apart, and that's like an obvious answer. So a lot of times you're just trying to play in ways where you pressure choke points. You try and play a little bit above the Reinhardt, and you're trying to interrupt their pathing so that you get your ult faster and at a higher frequency, so you can abuse that. And when you don't have it, then you're playing the Winston a little more like a Reinhardt. You're never gonna look to jump really deep, because if you jump deep in the backline, they just turn you and kill you. What you're gonna look for is you're gonna draw the resources. So you're gonna get the orb, you're gonna get the bubble, you're gonna get a bunch of resources, and you're gonna do shorter jumps in an area where your team can still kind of follow up and kind of close the distance with you. And you see what you get from those situations, because if you can help keep your Winston alive, those short jumps should still give him a lot of ult charge. Potentially, maybe use a rally to save him, things like that. So yeah, you're gonna try to play more together, and your job as a Winston is to jump in the middle and make sure that you split the back line from the front line. So that's where you should aim your jump.
Okay, kind of think of it like when we're not playing, when you don't have primal, kind of think of it like a vision manipulation sort of a thing. So you're demanding resources and attention that are directed towards you but aren't directed at your team, so that allows the rest of your core to play aggressively. But like Mineral was saying, it's important to remember that that your team, you need to be taking those engagements, unless you're just farming primal, you need to be taking those engagements where your team is able to follow up on it. Otherwise, you just get immediately focused down.
And your goal, even without the primal, is to split the enemy. You're never gonna look for kills, because if you look at the way they're set up here, say you're playing on a level playing field where there's no high ground, neither team can play above each other. If the Winston jumps right between the front line and the back line, Luffy obviously has to go backwards, and then and then the front line still has to pay attention to what's in front of them because the rest of your team is pushing forward, right? And that's kind of how you're if you're the Winston, you're never going to try to commit or look to kill the Luffy. You're just looking to force him further back, force Youngjin to use the armor pack on him, then potentially switch your target focus and see if you can kill someone in the front line with your Discord. And you're just playing to survive, draw out resources, and then potentially just jump out. And that's how you kind of create space.
A lot of the misconceptions is that, we jump, like, you're not really trying to kill the Zen. If you can get a Discord in the Zen, that's definitely a win condition, but it's difficult to do. So you're not always trying to kill the Zen. You're just trying to force him to overcommit on the peel, so that exposes their front line. Usually not the Rhine, because he hard shields, just backs up. But like you said, the Zarya, the Brig, anybody that's kind of immobile and slow and has less HP.
Yeah, and you're just kind of playing to survive.
So there's, you can see Youngjin just bullied Ding out, and we'll see what they do.
Yeah, so they go through house. They actually do go for the high ground push.
Right, okay.
Which is a little risky, but
yeah.
But they clear the high ground, and now it's over. That's the upside too, I suppose, because you have one fewer targets who can get booped. So as long as your diva sort of does her job well and like clears that, because I think it's interesting to look at how they exit through the choke point, because
they
kind
lean
of
into it. They lean into it. Like, and the Rhine is at first you're going to see just Super go through the choke point. If I remember correctly. So yeah, Super leans into it, and it's Super and Violet.
And Violet you can't really boop because he has his shift, right? And a Zen can't really do this. So in a way, and if you clear this high ground with Shock and the point hasn't opened, there's nowhere to go for the Dragons. They won't get an EMP. You will get first cap every single time. You can see the damage that the orb does as well. Violet's already at 70% because of it.
So chat, Violet uses damage as orbs. Just keep that in mind. Now, obviously in this situation, you're not really expecting Super to take a ton of damage, so you can get a little more greedy with that, but I get a little annoyed when the Reddit hive minds, the plat chat thinks that any more it throws damage orbs is feeding. That bothers me a little bit. Okay, DM gets caught, they just press W and win. They use Coalescence as well. Again, I feel like this is a situation where you would swap Zen, like, immediately. Like this, if I was coaching this team, now obviously I'm not a Overwatch League coach, and Krusty is much more experienced and better a coach than I am, but maybe this is just an oversight on at like the individual level, but I feel like Violet wants to swap now.
It's also, if you think about it from this perspective, that Dragons for the second find are probably coming back with an EMP, and what are you really gonna do with Zen? Like, you're just gonna hide. Maybe you're probably gonna get like 20-30%, but
because that's what I'm thinking. It's like, what are you really gonna do with Moira here? Because they have EMP for next fight. You've just used Coalescence, so you don't really have the option to like force a fight into them as well. And you don't have any other ults that you can't like rally. Well, maybe you might have. Oh no, Rascal's dead. I don't know. I look at this and I go, okay, yeah, it's not much, but if you're gonna lose the fight anyway, you might as well lose it where you can have some ult charge to go into the next.
Well, also you have to understand that you don't necessarily have to W immediately. You can play slow to hit your ult spikes with Sinatra and Rascal, because now you have the option to go high ground if you're Shock.
Right.
And if you're high ground, Shanghai cannot EMP you up top, because then you can't really shatter.
There's
up
no
top.
follow-up.
You can't really follow up. Exactly. Right. So that sort of gives them an opportunity to play, to kind of get up there and potentially survive. Whereas if there's a Zen on the board, then then you can get value by just EMPing them up top and maybe solo killing the Zen. That's what I would think if I'm the Shock. I'm not saying your opinion is right or what they're doing is right. I'm just saying that's probably
right. There's a reasoning behind.
If you flip the script,
Yes, that makes sense. Okay, so you hide up top. Moira's less vulnerable to EMP. She can dodge it pretty easily. She can also just survive it. You can still right click and left click through EMP. And like you said, there's no real way for Shanghai to force a fight here without forcing point pressure first, which. Yeah, like you said, you don't have to immediately press W. You just have to press W when like when the objective is seriously threatened.
Yeah, and you play here, you try and farm up your ults, and then you rush them with rally. That's usually what you're going to
So
try.
I'm expecting Shanghai to toe point, somebody drops, whoever drops gets EMP'd. That's probably my guess.
I would probably expect them to, if Sombra is the only one who contests, someone can contest him on his own, probably the Diva. And then they're just going to wait for the rally, try and farm the rally as soon as possible, maybe take a little bit of damage and rally, or like try to use whip shot to farm it. And then as soon as you get it, and as soon as they take, Shanghai takes the corner of the point, think about it. Where can Ding play? He's always going to set up on the opposite side on as wide of an angle as the Rhine shield, right? Which is where he is. You know, if they would go main, that's exactly the angle that he has. So you have the potential, wait till they get to the corner, rally, and then rush them away from Ding, which means Ding has to either translocate in to get everyone, or he has to have like really, really good positioning to be ready to get everyone. But then, you know, maybe what if only 3 people drop? Do I EMP or do I not? Then maybe someone on the high ground doesn't, you know, there's a lot of, that's how you put the pressure on them, and then maybe Ding can make a mistake.
So you're saying, you know, Shanghai pushes here, they meet, like, they get that rally, they drop rally, and they just run at them. And then now Ding is over here like, do I go over, do I chase them? Do I wait for somebody else to drop? Okay, that makes sense.
He sort of ends up in dead space where he's just trailing the play.
Yep. And that's a lot easier to do if you're running a Moira. With Zen, you have the potential risk of your Zen lagging behind and getting clipped from behind. Less of a problem with running a Moira.
Yeah, there's a much larger chance of an insta-gib if you have.
Oh, and there they go. they just get picked. Youngchin, what's wrong with you, bud? What happens? The damage orb tickles him, but they looking at no right click. What on earth happens? I'm trying to watch ult charge here because he goes from 200 HP to. Nope.
Well, the thing is, he just kind of overextends, right? And the thing is,
Super gets a swing. A nice swing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the thing. They see that Youngjin is in a position where Super can get within swing range, right? So they don't even need to wait for Rascal, because for them to win, they need to get a kill before the EMP comes out, or get the kill at the same time as the EMP comes out. So they see that Youngjin overreaches, and they just go, okay, we can get him.
This is our only chance to win this fight. You know, this is it.
And even if they EMP, you see Sinatra still on top. He has a good position. They trade 1 for 1, and Sinatra can just farm them from up top. Maybe they kite around the corner. Maybe someone else dodges it. I don't know. Maybe Rascal is hiding. I can see Rascal maybe is in the fight, maybe he isn't. If he's hiding, maybe he can get his rally. You know, there's a lot of win conditions. But yeah, they just spot Youngjin out of position, and they need to get the kill, which means you're not going to be focused on the Reinhardt. You're either going to look for the Brig or the Zen or the Lucio, preferably the Brig, because she's going to be closest to the Reinhardt.
Yeah, makes sense. Yes, we're only reviewing Oasis here.
No barrier available.
Okay, and so now this is the situation. What does Ding do?
Yeah,
you know,
there's no.
I think he basically commits to just, okay, we just lose this fight. San Francisco shocked because they don't have a Zen. It's kind of hard to get the damage at poke there. So like once they get the first elim, it's pretty easy for Shanghai to just kite pretty hard without getting punished.
And we can see, like in this map, in the previous map, Shock's tempo is just so fast. Anytime they're against an EMP, they just go first, whether it's using a grab. In both situations, when they had a grab on the previous stage, on the university stage, they went first with a grab. Same thing here. Even without an ultimate, they see an opening, they know the ring condition, and they go first.
Right. And that's crucial. Like, people are kind of plat chat, and it's understandable because a lot of the casters push this narrative, and this is the same with Vancouver and Bumper and things like that, where they just run people over, just press W, you know, and they never stop. But there's the context behind that. Like you're like you said, they're waiting for windows. They're waiting for opportunities when they can press W. They you'll notice Vancouver will play extremely aggressively and then just switch it off, just like completely turn it off, and then turn it right back on at like full speed there. So Shock playing high ground, poking, and then immediately at the drop of a pin, they're on top of Shanghai, killing them with the window that they have. So it's important to remember that like Goats isn't just pressing W, it's about going, okay, this is an opportunity to do something, we're going to do it now. And that's why some of the better Goats teams are the teams that have it is such a team coordination composition style, because if Super drops and Rascal or Sinatra or whoever, they don't immediately commit with him, then Super dies, right? And that's where you have a feeding Reinhardt. That's the difference between Bumper and other Ryans, is Bumper is not necessarily more aggressive. He just knows that whatever aggression that he shows, whatever windows that he sees, they're able to follow up on it. And Shock is really good at that. Like, we saw it right there. There's a window, they're dead. It's a blink of an eye, and Youngjin's already dead. And that's what makes a Goats team great. What do you think works better versus Sombra Goats, Spilo? Shock's current composition or Ana Winston Goats as Titan likes to play? So I will answer that, and I don't know if you have anything to add on top of that. Ana Winston is good, but Ana Winston needs map control. So your Ana needs a sightline. We kind of already talked about why Winston going into a Rhine can be a problem. Ana Winston has a lot of different win conditions, like playing around Nano, playing around nades, and things like that. In neutral fight, I really feel like the best composition versus Sombra Goats in the long run is just Zen Goats. You have an answer for Grav, you have ultimates to counter EMP. The Moira Goats, again, feels like, okay, we don't know what they're running, so we're going to roll out Moira. We go back to spawn, but there is a certain problem with trying to retake with Zen, as we discussed earlier, so they stay with the Moira. There's a reasoning behind it. But in a fight where you were to 100% know that Shanghai is running Sombra, Shock would be running Zen. That's my best guess. Mineral, your thoughts on that?
Sorry, if Shock, can you repeat that last part?
The question was like, okay, what do you think is better versus Sombra Goats, Shock's current composition, or Ana Winston Goats?
I think if you're a good Goats team, you just play Goats into Sombra Goats and you win.
Yeah.
Maybe you lose a map here or there, but if you are the better Goats team and you know how to play against, if you're put it like this, if your Goats is at the level of Shock, Vancouver, and even New York Excelsior, I think you just play 3-3 every time with the Rhine.
Yep, I would agree with that. Again, I think I said Ana Winston is played usually in situations where you have map control, like first point defenses and things like that.
Yeah, and it's also played in situations when you're playing against a team where you expect that there's a chance they might play DPS. Exactly. So that's why you've seen Vancouver run it a lot on Hanamura for a little while. You saw some teams, I think, run it on Rialto first defenses. Potentially. So yeah, those are the maps, and it's matchup dependent, and it's a little bit map dependent.
Okay.
Because even on a map like Eichenwalde, that's not a map where Shock would like. That's where Shock played the Batiste Goats, right? Yeah. Because there's so many hiding spots, you can still sustain. You're just looking to build ult, sustain, and milk a clock, and then eventually stabilize on second. You know, it's there's different takes to it, but yeah, that's basically where people have played on a floats, I guess.
Again, recently, I think the reason they stayed on the Moira was obviously there's, like we discussed, win conditions for Moira into Sombra Goats, but most importantly, it was because, as Mineral was saying, they would have to retake space into a Sombra and into a Zen with high ground, who would be able to find more elimination opportunities onto your Zenyatta. So there was running Zen. Because San Francisco had to go back and swap their Winston to a Rhine, going Zen back into that was dangerous. If San Francisco Shock had just opened Zen Goats, I don't think they would have gone back and swapped Moira. They would have stayed on the Zen.
Wasn't anywhere near them. They decided to collapse into the rest of
Okay, so looking at this fight, the question is Shock going to... Do we see a rally into them and force a Grav, and then hopefully force a support ult and EMP? What do you think if you're Shock here, what is your best guess with how this fight's going to go?
I think you probably look to play it similarly like you did the last fight on the previous stage, where you rally Grav, and then you look to try and burst DM potentially, or Youngjin, and before the EMP comes out. You're most like, unless you get that kill again, like unless you get a first kill before the EMP comes out, you're probably losing the fight. But I think that's the way you can force out the most ults. You probably get the trance, you probably get the EMP. Obviously you don't have another support ult, which is again why Zen is so good. And because they're winning the fights so fast, you don't have the beat either. So like Moth can't really hide and counter beat. So it's going to be very, very difficult to win this fight from an ult economy perspective.
It is. And the problem is they're going to go into next fight without a trance, and so DM will be able to win the next fight as well. So as long as Shanghai doesn't screw this up hard, San Francisco Shock is going to lose this, and they're going to lose the next fight.
You can see that they're watching the flank as well. They're making sure that Dink cannot path up top, which means he can only play below them.
Yeah, so here it is. So they're rallying in. There's the damage orb. They're all dropping. They are hard committing on this. They really,
Much
really,
better.
Yeah, they really want that EMP. They want the support ult, really. Oh. Huh.
Really good distance management by Shanghai. Here they expected it, and they just kited out.
And that's crippling as Shock, because you needed that rally to force the EMP.
Yeah.
And now, if you're Sinatra, I don't know if you grab anymore. I don't know if that you're in a position now, because like considering like the distance between the Shock and the Shank, like this distance right now concerns me that if they grabbed, if they would even be able to get follow up anymore. If they would be, would they be able to force a support ult with grab now? And I don't know that they would.
It feels to me like looking at the map right now, it feels like they immediately called spread for grav when they didn't get value. Maybe they still grab and hope that they get a support ult. But I'm not sure, especially how trigger happy Shanghai has been with their support ults. Maybe you still want to do it. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see.
Spread for grab or spread for EMP? Because I would have guessed the latter.
Spread from the EMP, yeah.
Okay.
Did I said spread? Did I say
spread for grab? Which confusing because like that's a play too, but I wouldn't sure. Okay.
No, definitely, yeah. The EMP.
Okay. Interesting. And Shaka's still, the good thing about this is Shaka's still been able to contest point pretty. Like they're getting like the longer the fight goes, yeah, it's not great for Shock the longer the fight goes in terms of like win conditions, but they are getting more objective percentage here.
I think maybe so now Youngjin rallies, so maybe you try to use an ult to try and stop them, and then maybe if they EMP, maybe they can't follow up, but they still have the shatter. Maybe like I'm thinking, do you grab now? If that's natural grab now when Youngjin comes in, because maybe you can buy a little more time. You know that they're going to be trying to take space, and you cannot give this space up. There's nowhere else to kite for San Francisco Shock. You have to stop the momentum, and then maybe Violet and some other players hide. Maybe you can dodge it somehow. But I think now you probably have to grab.
So my problem with that is you had the rally earlier that was basically allowing you to get to a point to where you could get kill potential off of the graph. If you grab now, I'm not sure that there is that kill potential, especially considering Youngjin is now rallying. So theoretically, yeah, you grab, that will stop them from aggressing, but will you actually get a kill out of that? Especially during the rally?
No, yeah, I think you're grabbing to stop the momentum to make sure you don't just lose this fight to just a rally. Because now there's nowhere to go. And yeah, I think you use that, you try to get a kill, and that forces Shanghai to use other ults. And maybe if Violet gets his ult up fast enough, maybe you can trade that for another ult, but you want to, I think, milk the clock a little more here, and potentially use that, because you absolutely cannot afford to lose this to just the rally, I don't think.
Okay. You do think that rally is an actual threat to Shock right now?
Yeah, I think so, because they're spreading out, so they're not looking to brawl because they're worried about the EMP. Certain members of the team are hiding, which means Super or Rascal or whoever's in the front line, they're just gonna fall over, or they're gonna have to kite, and if they kite, then Shanghai just gets the point potentially.
Yep. Okay.
Or you try to shatter to stop momentum, but this is the thing. You see how fast Super dies?
Yep.
This is why I grab first instead of shattering. Obviously, if you hit the shatter instead of grabbing, then you can hold on to that grab, and that's huge.
This looks like a bash shatter.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Looks like a bash shatter. It looks like a failed bash shatter because Rascal bashes, but Youngjin bashes him. So we got Rascal on his back.
Yeah, but to my point is, Shock understands.
No.
Shock understands that they cannot give up any more space, and they have to use an ultimate in response to Youngjin's. Because the enemy uses rally, you don't have rally. You either give up space, or use an ultimate to maintain that space. That's the only way you can play it out. Here they opted for a bash shatter that failed, so then they have to use the grab for it, which. But Super dies.
They shouldn't be bombing this.
No, they should not. It's a panic play. But that's why I'm saying maybe grab first, because it's safer. You know what I mean? Like it's Bash Shatter is still going to be a little bit risky. Yeah, like if you hit the Bash Shatter, you probably win or you force out a lot of ults. So you can be a lot more economic. But if you miss the Bash Shatter, then you're committing 2 ults.
Right.
Or in this situation, 3 ults for just the rally and the trance. So
okay. So this bomb will probably kill 1, if maybe nobody. I think does Ding actually EMP this? He EMPs it. Wow. Okay. Really, all you had to do there was kill Rascal, or just kind of keep Rascal at bay. You didn't need to EMP anybody else. This is surprising. I mean, this is great for Shock, but
but also okay, they shatter too.
They shatter too. Yikes. This old economy is disastrous.
I wouldn't see. I'm not, when they commit the bomb and all of that. I don't mind them potentially using the EMP just to be on the safe side, you know, just because San Francisco used shatter rally combo and they're swapping Violet, so they're gonna come back with beat, and you're gonna have Grav and beat for the next fight anyway. There's no way you're losing the next fight. So I'm using.
You can be greedier if you'd like to.
Yeah, but if you're Shanghai, you don't want to be greedy here. You could be a little more greedy in terms of like saving one of the ults, but just to be on the safe side, I'm probably using the MP because I don't want to end up in a situation where maybe the bomb gets a kill.
Yep.
And then I EMP afterwards, but then it's a 5v5, and Violet doesn't get EMP'd. He gets his ult off, and then we end up using Grav as well. I don't want to end up in that situation. So because of how much Shock committed, I'm fine. Even them committing these 2 ults, they're still in a very good spot for next fight because Violet has a swap. So,
so as long as you don't have to, as long as you're not having to use EMP and Grav, because Violet is like theoretically on the wrong hero here, it does mean that the next fight is a guaranteed win.
Yeah.
Violet's not swapping, so Coalescence, they're going to try and survive the Grav with Coalescence beat. Looks like, which can work. Do you swap here? So it look this. I don't know. Like, I understand that they're playing to survive and win the next fight, but I think you go into Sombra Goats and you go, okay, there are going to be fights that we lose. And even though with Koth, that's obviously that's a dangerous game to play because there are fewer fights. I don't know that I agree with this staying here.
Yeah, I think
especially because you're at 1 fight. You're basically you only have to win 1 out of the next 3 or 4 fights to win. And if Moira, if basically this is how I look at it. If Shock doesn't win the next fight, they lose the map. Which they obviously lose the map here, so we can probably guess that they lose. But if you don't win the next fight,
if you stay in Moira, you mean?
Yes. If you don't, if you stay in Moira, you are committing to winning the next fight, with your Coalescence and beat. But if you lose that, then you're gonna probably swap to Zen, right? And then you're gonna have Shanghai at 35-40%, which means they win the next fight, and they can theoretically win the next fight.
Yeah, I don't think Violet gets a new trance. Like,
I don't know that he gets trance until maybe last fight, if even that.
Yeah.
And even in that situation, even if Shock wins, they could theoretically regroup and push 1 more time after that.
Yeah. The biggest issue is just how badly Shock messed up their ultimates trying to salvage that situation.
So
you could see the reasoning, but yeah, you'd never bomb there. If they had bomb here, however, then if Choi didn't bomb the previous Grav. But then again, if he didn't bomb the previous Grav, maybe he wouldn't gotten Dings and Gams assaults, right? So it's kind of...
You're right. If he doesn't bomb that, you don't see EMP, I don't think.
Yeah. So it's difficult to play that game.
Either way. Yeah, that's still the reason why I still feel like the bomb is the throw, though, is I don't think you expect Shanghai to always EMP that in defense. And if they don't, if you like, you're committing for the bomb to get a kill or force an ult, and if it doesn't, then you're screwed.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're just pushing in with Coalescence. They're gonna force the Grav, I assume. I'm trying to see where Shoyobin is because I think that's important right now.
Yeah, so staying on the Moira allows you to clear this high ground again. That's the advantage over.
So where is Shoyobin? Okay, so I'm looking for Shoyobin. Where is Shoyobin? Because I feel like this is... So he's on stairs. Maybe
I
he's...
think he's inside the room. Maybe.
I cannot see him.
Neither does DM, so he risks, I guess, a little bit with the grab.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the Coalescence. They're committing beat. Yeah, okay. I still don't think you win this, though, because they can just counter beat, which is what Koma's doing right now.
Now you just need really good target focus if you're Shanghai and you win. Yeah.
And that's it. And they focused on Sinatra, who's drops from high ground. Why does Sinatra drop? I mean, obviously the LOS problems are an issue, but he does drop. He does drop down into the middle of Shanghai.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And again, the longer the fight goes, the better Shanghai does with this comp. They have a Zen. Shock doesn't. So just the longer the fight goes, the worse it is.
Yeah.
Damage.
I don't think. Yeah.
Damage beats healing the longer the fight goes. I think is the general until ults come online.
For Sinatra's, like you say, LOS is an issue. So without Sinatra's damage and like bursting someone, there's no way you win because you just bleed out. Mathematically from a damage standpoint, but if you drop like this, obviously you feed and you die as well. So like there's no real winning. I think you just the way the ults play out, you just kind of lose.
Okay.
I think you need to eat the grab if you're Shock.
Yeah, that's why I was looking for Shoy. I was expecting them to go in and try and force the grab with Coalescence or force the beat. Because if you can force a beat with just Coalescence and aggression, then you know you can counter beat and force the grab, like something like that. But there, I don't know where Shoy was.
But actually, credit to DM because he understood that his team wouldn't be able to keep the high ground against the Coalescence against the Moira. He learned from the first fight, so he immediately dropped and played further back from the get-go. Like kited out that Coalescence, which didn't give Violet a chance to kind of find him and all in on him because it's too big of a difference, you know.
He read the tempo well. He read the tempo really well. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is bad. This is a drawn-out fight. Yeah. And so now you've got Ding, and look at DM's ult charge too. That's pretty bad. So now even though they just grabbed, he's now on par with Sinatra in ult charge, and because he's going to have the higher charge leading into next fight, he's going to pass Sinatra in grab charge.
Yeah, and another thing with the Moira is in those type of fights that end up as dry fights that you're losing, she also drags out the fight a little longer than it should be, even when the fight is unwinnable,
right? Because
of her healing output, and you just end up feeding more ult charge, and
your ult sucks in comparison to others. So it's like the longer the fight goes, okay, so you lose. So my thoughts is the second you lose Sinatra, you just jump off. I would say you literally just jump off coast there, end it, because you do not want to try and sustain. Right, you don't want to sustain. You don't want to waste any more time. You don't have point control. You're not building valuable ultimates. You're not making a good ultimate trade. End it. Jump. And okay, so Violet makes a swap, and now we're at 50%, and the fight hasn't even started. This is a lost fight. There's no way. I don't see how Shock wins this. Like, again, there's always a theoretical chance. Rascal does have rally. Maybe you rally in. Maybe you force a bad EMP and you get a kill on Youngjin or DM. But Shanghai's not even really concerned about that because they have their own rally. So they could just kite or they can match rallies and just kind of play patty cake. This to me, this is already a lost map.
Yeah. It's not winnable, no. You need someone to enter really hard.
You need this to be big. I think that's the only chance
but it's so hard.
Right, exactly. It's forcing a
shatter.
shatter.
Get EMP'd, they're up top. You can't really make a play.
Right. So I'm surprised to see Shanghai rallying first. That's odd.
They wanted to rally EMP, I think, but then Ding didn't really have an EMP angle because of like Choi, the way Choi plays, and Rascal's playing there as well, so he doesn't want to get bashed.
Yeah. So this is just to me, this shows Shanghai's inexperience or just not being as good at goats. Because you look at this.
Winnable,
I'm getting a bit donation. Cody, stop interrupting me. Basically, it's like Super's not really in an engageable position here, especially when you are running a normal goats. You know, your diva is able to peel for you with her boosters. You've got speed, things like that. So Shanghai drops prematurely here. And unlike the Shock in previous rounds, or the previous fights we've seen where they kind of knew the trigger for them to drop and get a kill, Shanghai doesn't. And so, like you said, they anticipate it, but it's not there.
Another point is I don't really like Dink's positioning here because you know that they Shock is gonna most likely contest a corner on the point. So I think you want to position in a way where you can just EMP rush super. So from this angle, he can't really EMP. But if he played towards the house, not the house, like the inside, you know what I mean?
Like
no,
here?
no, the other side.
This side.
Yeah, then he could potentially just wait and then translocate out, EMP, and then everyone rushes super, right?
Yeah, if you kill super, it's over.
Yeah, or if he plays this angle, he has to kill his translocator, and as soon as they drop, throw it in an EMP. Because you're not winning with just the rally. You need the EMP to win this fight. You need to ideally EMP quite early so that San Francisco doesn't get to build their support ults, and then you just win the next fight with a grab.
Yep. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But now they just kind of kite it out, so they get an ult for free if you're Shock.
Yep.
It does give you a little bit of time and a little bit of percentage, but...
Okay, so they rally in. I guess it get... Oh, ooh, that's a big shatter.
It's so risky.
Yeah.
So Shock is putting the pressure. They have to react to it. Ding has to kill his translocator and move into range of Brig and go for this EMP. If the shatter doesn't hit, then...
Yeah, if Brig's not on her back, could be a feed.
Yeah.
This is just really sloppy from Shanghai. I'm really not happy with Gamsu's positioning either. Gamsu is not reading the tempo well. Okay, so actually super is shattering right now. I assume Rascal's going for shield bash and just misses, or I assume that's what they're doing. I mean, this
and he also just wants to get his ult off. This is what you said. He wants to use his shatter to force something out, and this is the only way he can get it.
No, super fed. Super just threw it. Hammered down right now. Okay. So he just fed it. But realistically here, if Rascal rally shatters, then that could force, they could get an elimination before the EMP, and based off of, like you said, Ding's positioning here, he's not really in a great position to EMP. He's going to be late. He's going to be, only getting 1 or 2. If Sinatra still has bubble, if we still have amp, whatever, they could sustain super through the EMP if Gamsu's already dead. This is really sloppy from Shanghai. Go ahead.
Yeah, you also have to remember for super, he doesn't know that Ding is playing this position because obviously he's invisible. So if you're super, you're not thinking, oh, they're gonna give us time to set up a bash shatter. You're thinking, I'm gonna get EMP'd any second now. I'm on the clock. If I need to take sort of the first shatter angle that I can get, hit something to force out a better ult. Which is why he kind of, I think, shatters early. Because Ding, again, if Ding is playing the position I told you, super gets EMP'd before the shatter even comes off.
And they have to trans Gamsu as well. That fight drug on for they let San Francisco almost get away with murder there.
Yeah. But good practice by Shock. As soon as they drop, they're just trying to get their ults off. They're putting the pressure on, and they get trans, rally, and EMP. You should have just won that with EMP most likely.
Yeah. Their triggers aren't they're just not as disciplined. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay. DMs, they're gonna come into this fight with a grab, but because they blew their trance, because they it just took way too long, right? They blew the rally, they blew the trance. Now Shock can theoretically still win this fight. They come into this fight now. Obviously, they don't have map control, but they can match the grav. And if they could just basically, so you're gonna look to counter grav, right? Well, no. Let me think about this. I would say you grab first, right? I would say if you're Shock. And my reasoning there is you want to grab first because not only do you have the ult advantage, you don't mind if they counter grab you. You really don't care if you get 0 ults out of your grab. The only reason that you're grabbing is so that you are giving Violet enough time to farm up his trance.
Another reason is because when you grab first, DM can't reliably counter grab without taking a risk unless Choi is hacked.
Right. So you grab first. You can potentially eat the counter grab, but even basically you force if you grab first, DM has to grab. He has to grab back. Otherwise, they'll just die through the grab because they no longer have trance.
Yeah, exactly.
which if they counter grab back, it doesn't really matter because Ding is not really in a position to get EMP in the next 10 seconds, but Violet is definitely in a position to get his trance. And then they bomb in and Shanghai loses. And then worst case scenario, Violet will still have his trance. So, and they're going to have shatter too. So I don't know how Shanghai wins this.
I think someone is still in spawn. They don't have time for a full 6v6 regroup. I think that's it. See,
oh my
Violet
gosh.
Oh, they got okay. They got yeah. That's pretty much the only way they win.
Oh no! Oh dear me.
Choi gets hacked, right? Or no, he doesn't. But he looks around to try and stop the hack, and that's the opening.
And that's it.
Boom.
Wow. So literally, Ding decloaking here won them that fight. Or won them the map. Yeah. Actually won them the game, really, because this is
trying to go for the hack on Choi, because otherwise, there's no way you win this fight if you're
incredible.
Shanghai. Because even when they grab first there, like you see, they just get counter grabbed. There's nothing that they can do with that. And again, you have the trance, you just win it. But
that should not have happened at all.
So really sloppy, sloppy.
So changing gears here, we're gonna see Shanghai coming out on triple DPS. Now we've seen Soldier on this map with the triple DPS. Normally you see, I've never seen this combo before. I've seen Sombra Soldier. Is generally what I see here. Now, the reasoning, I assume, is because the high ground's really good. You know, you don't have as much, I guess, crossfire as much, but your damage output's higher. And also, having the soldier, you know, kind of provides a buddy for your Ana. So you can utilize the high ground, you have higher damage output, and you can kind of buddy with your Ana, kind of control the high ground there. That's my, I guess as to why soldiers run here. It's a good map for him. Any thoughts on what this is? I mean, obviously this is going to be a Mercy, but anything else based off of what Shanghai is running in particular?
I mean, the alternative is to run Sombra.
Well, yeah, but it's odd. But this is usually a Tracer, or usually a Sombra.
The issue is that Ding is the Sombra player on Shanghai.
Oh, didn't know that.
And Youngjin, as far as Youngjin's DPS pool, like he has a really weird hero pool, and I think one of the only DPS heroes that he plays is the Soldier. And then DM is obviously an exceptional Tracer and Widow, but he doesn't really play Sombra because he doesn't have to, because Ding plays it. So I think just because of your hero pools, that's what you end up with.
All right, so this is just, like you said, more of a hero pool limitation than a big brain kind of strategy. Okay, again, Shock rolls out on a comp that it just feels like I've been confused a lot by Shock's rollout compositions. Now, a lot of this may have to do with, like you said, with Shanghai's weird comps that they roll out on. So like the whole Ryan Zarya pharmacy kind of thing. But I think you go into this and you really only expect triple DPS or Sombra Goats, right? I don't think that you... And do you want to stay on either of these compositions into that? Does this want, like... Do they want to play this into Sombra Goats? Do they want to play this into triple DPS? This is not a great comp into triple DPS. I mean, you have the Moira, but this is City Center. This is not a good map for, you know, Moira Goats. You know, it's not going to work.
If you see this, you just go back and swap to Sombra floats. I think. Yeah,
I agree, and I think that this. I don't think that, like, if you know you're probably going to swap anyway, why aren't you opening your Winston Sombra comp? And if you're like, oh well, they might be running Sombra Goats, well then why aren't you just opening normal Zen Goats? You know what I'm saying here? Because this feels like they would go back to spawn and swap no matter what they saw, which seems inefficient. Would you stay on this into Sombra Goats? I don't. Like, do you really feel confident in this? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, that they would prefer to be on Zen Goats here if they saw Sombra Goats.
So I think if they see Sombra Goats, they think that they will win first fight with this comp like 95% of the time. That's how I think they feel. Because of, you know, the fast time. I think you saw how easily they won first fights. On both occasions. So I think they're investing a lot in winning first fight. And I think that's pretty much it. And then they hope that they can kind of grind it out and force out mistakes through proactive plays across the board, which is, again, with their playstyle, they did sort of do that. they set themselves up to easily 2-0 this on again, partially due to Shanghai's sloppiness, but also because they are playing proactively. They are forcing out these mistakes through proactiveness.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So they do decide to stay in Rein Moira here. I think the way they're going is really the only way you can play this into here.
Yep.
You stick your Rein right here. You put your back line here. You can bully out flanks. You just win through point control. And then whenever you see a real opportunity, you can rush it. But that's about it. Like, you really are just playing for objective, probably playing for coalescence and using your coalescence to bully out the pharmacy while you try and chase whatever's on objective. This is not a good map for Rein into DPS. And they're continuing this rotation. Interesting. So I assume this tells me they want to take high ground, but I don't know if that's the play.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this. I don't think this is great because at this point, Youngjin should be set up on the high ground. You're trying to cross an area where Gamsu can already slam. Ding is going to be able to shoot you the whole way through.
So I'm drawing here. And DPS kills you on transition. Like, when you're going from point A to point B, this is dangerous here. This is when DPS can utilize their map control heavily, and your backline is not in cover. Just because you're running a Moira doesn't mean you're invulnerable. Yeah, and Ding is just murdering them. Yeah, that's not the play. And if that was the play, then you would not be going street side. You would be going through here. And then
I wonder if they were like expecting maybe a Sombra, and when it's they have a soldier, if they have a soldier, we don't want to give them high ground, so let's take over top. Maybe that was sort of the early call that they made.
So they make the initial rotation expecting Sombra, and they go, oh, there's no Sombra, they're running DPS, so they then make the entire cross map rotation. But
because you don't want to waste any resources against these DPS compositions before points open and before you have point pressure. And like, the rotation is just really weird. Like, so you might be able to force the soldier off, but it's just so risky.
It's not. And all the soldier's going to do is they're going to rotate away. And again, the longer the fight goes, unless your backline is in a good hiding spot, which we showed where that was earlier, then you're going to lose. So this feels like they feel like they're like, oh, we don't want to be here, we want to try and force the soldier out, and then you really can't, though. You can't.
And also Ana, because they have so much sustain, and it's going to be difficult for them to take space on the point as well because of that sustain. But to me, so I don't think there's like I don't think that's the call, but I don't think they would win playing standard either. So I think you just go Sombra floats. I think that's I think there's a little too much confidence in their goats here. Okay, so they do swap Winston, but Sinatra wants to stay, and I think that's a big mistake. And if I remember correctly, he builds a grav at like 80%, I think. Yeah. And that's a problem. It's just so hard. There's nothing to build your grav on.
It is. It's
very hard to get energy because your Winston's jumping on singular targets who just run away from him. But then again, you're probably bubbling your diva most of the time to mark the Pharah, so maybe you get some energy there, maybe not.
Right. Okay. So I guess they're going to go for this high ground rotation again, but now they're like more directly there. But then again, like Ding just lands a good rocket. Like they nade. It's a nade. So Violet gets naded and then damage boost direct rocketed.
And that's why they're prioritizing to try and take high ground away from the Ana, I think, in the first fight too, and why they try to do it here, because when she is on that high ground, she can hit those nades pretty consistently. So, like she does here.
So the thing, I want to talk really quick about this. So the reason why you run a Sombra here isn't just because, it's more mobile, you can set up dives and things like that. It gives you more options on retake, because Zarya really is, like, if she doesn't have a good position, if she's not getting targets coming to her, it's hard for her to force aggression on targets. So, like, she needs something, like, this entire composition needs something to, like, pull the Shanghai Dragons apart. Like, they have limited tank resources, they have limited defensive resources. If your Sombra can get on point, force the ball to step on a point, maybe hack the ball, maybe now Honest, pocketing the hacked ball, like, that's an opportunity for your team to do something. Maybe your Sombra goes jump pad, and then you're able to stage a dive onto their Ana with your Winston and your Sombra, so then the soldiers focusing them, and then the Ana's obviously running away, and then the Mercy has to break her pocket off, and then maybe the Hammond's trying to go for a defensive boop. So, and then that basically enables your core to rotate with just an unpocketed Pharah and Tracer dealing with it. So it's like the Zarya doesn't do a lot here. And just simply having the Sombra being able to pull attention in different directions, like demand resources, like to kind of establish her own sort of crossfire, and at the very least just stage a dive, would be incredibly useful right now. But as it is right now, it's literally just Shock slamming their heads into a wall, into a DPS composition that already has map control on them. And it's not working. Like, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, so I completely agree. I think the Sombra floats is much easier to execute with. I think from the Shock's perspective, again, if we play devil's advocate, what they're thinking is if we can potentially retake with, because we didn't start on the Sombra, if we can potentially retake with the Zarya, then Shanghai has to most likely swap to Sombra Goats for their retake.
Yep.
If they do that, we're all on the correct picks.
Yep.
Whereas if we start with the Sombra floats and then maybe we still lose the first retake, it's going to take a while for us to farm the MP. And then even when we potentially retake, now we have to swap again because Shanghai is swapping. So Shanghai is in one fight territory, and they can just go into Sombra floats and kind of beat
right.
you.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate to that devil's advocate.
Yeah.
This is a really good map to stall out fights. And even if San Francisco Shock wins with Sombra floats, and Shanghai swaps their composition up. So if they swap to Sombra Goats, because Ding is on Pharah and not on Sombra, they don't have a Sombra, they're completely resetting their ult charge. Like, completely. They don't have a single ult to swap into. And then, yes, you're on a Winston, yeah, you're on a Sombra, yeah, you're on a Moira, and that kind of sucks going into whatever Shanghai would swap to. But because of the map geometry, it is very easy to stall things out and just farm EMP. You cycle your tanks one at a time, and then use the middle pillar, and then you can even put like your Moira on the jump pad, and it takes forever to flip this point back.
Surrendering space on this map is less punishing than it is on, say, University, where you have to hold the front corner. So yeah, I agree with that. I think the biggest thing is just you have to kind of start with Sombra floats. And then the whole thing is much easier. Then you probably win the first fight, and then even if Shanghai swaps, you can still win another fight, and then you're sort of in the driving seat like Shanghai is now. But
and a lot of the Shock's mistakes have come from us saying, well, if they could or if they were able to, and they just didn't happen. Now normally Shock is able to because they're just a better team, but it was gambles that were calculated, but they flopped, and they were gambles, and they were not sure things. Okay, so Ding is looking for barrage here. I'm a little surprised he's going for an aggressive barrage. That doesn't really feel necessary. I generally like to milk out the matrix first, especially when you're playing into like a like there's nothing particularly here that's forcing them to rush anything here, but that's my take. I'd also like them to combo ults here too. Like, I would like to see Hammond Mine, or like a Hammond Mine plus barrage, or a Pulse Bomb barrage. Like make Shock think about more than just one thing. So we'll see what happens. Okay, so there's the Coalescence. They do Nano Barrage. You can't really do that. Like, everybody in Shock is just gonna look at you and kill you. Like, there's nothing pulling their attention elsewhere, and they're rushing it too. Like, there's no reason to go for this until they get to point anyway, right? Whereas you're killing them as they make that transition. Any thoughts on like this whole decision making from Shanghai?
Yeah, I mean, from Ding's perspective, I think you're a little scared of the Coalescence, because if you just play around point, you can easily get pushed away by the Coalescence and the Diva, and then you can never really find a mid-fight barrage angle, or it's a little harder. So that's probably why he's trying to do it, and also because he's expecting the nade. But I think once he doesn't get them on the cross, like now is just super risky. Matrix, bubbles, Coalescence. I think Winston probably is in a position to block it, but like he's not really comboing with anything else either. You see Gamsu to the left, he's not slamming. There's no mines,
and he's not really fighting in a sight lane where his soldier can contribute a whole lot either.
And also there's no Sombra as well, so it's like enabling this play is so much harder because you don't have a hack. Just hacking one of these players would make Dink's life much easier, or if he could combine it with Gamsu's slam. But yeah.
I feel like there's no like you can afford to be greedy when you're running DPS here. Like you can throw 3 ults at a fight because kind of in the back of your mind you're expecting to have to swap at some point. So I don't think it ends up happening here, but like Shanghai can go, you know what? We can use Hammond Mines, we can use our Pulse Bomb and our Barrage, and it doesn't matter. We're just looking to get as much value as possible, because generally what happens is with DPS compositions is you end up losing half your ults anyway because you're forced to swap and
exactly.
You can't really retake. So
okay, that's what we talked about. You're fine trading, extending the fight, trading all of your ults for all of San Francisco's, and then swapping into a better comp.
Yeah. Okay, so Shock is just kind of sustaining here. Shanghai Dragons at this point, this is a lost fight, but it's gonna be a 99%. So
the game is over when the fight is over when Ding dies.
Nano Barrage, that's tough.
You're committing 2 ults and you're 1 man down pretty much. So.
Okay, but Shanghai is it's not the end of the world. It is 1 fight potential. Shock is still on a not great composition here. And because they swapped to the Winston late, and because they're still not on, and because they weren't able to win the fight fast enough, this is single fight situations here. So if Shanghai just goes Reinhardt Goats, it's kind of over. And I feel like, again, because this is solo fight situation, and because Shanghai has just reset their ult charge, I feel like Violet needs to switch. Violet has to swap here. And I don't think he's going to. But
also good swapping by Shanghai, because sadly, not all teams realize this. I don't know if you watched the Washington-Boston game where Washington got the upset. We were in the exact same situation on Busan, I think Sanctuary, and Boston got 99% with 3 DPS against the Sombra floats. So not this, but Sombra floats. They were in one fight situation. They didn't really have ults to retake, and they stuck on 3 DPS for every single retake and just get out-tempoed and lost the game.
Were they running Farah?
No, there was no Farah.
There was no Farah. Okay, was it? I'm guessing Widow Sombra Tracer. That's the Boston.
Or maybe it was. Let me think. It was Widow Sombra.
Something.
Something.
Yeah, they like their Widow Sombra Tracer. Boston does.
Yeah.
Did a little bit of analysis of them in the past. So okay. So like San Francisco Shock wins. If they go back to spawn and they swap both the Rhine and the Moira, they still win this next fight. And you win the fight. You get your old economy back. You're on the heroes that you want to, and this is just so bad. This is really bothersome. And it's hard for when you're running the Winston. It's going to be hard for you to force. We won't go into it, but like it's just going to be wow. Okay, so there's Young Jin, but like Ding's still farming, and they're using Prime.
And he just wants to. Actually, give me 1 second.
Yep. All right, chat. How are we doing? Full match analysis? Yeah, that would. Listen, how long are we into this? Yeah, so we're basically an hour and a half into this, and we're not done yet. So okay, hey.
I gotta go soon. But what I want to add into this is like Super wants to throw away his ult anyway, but their win condition is Grav. So they use the Grav, and then they kind of want to throw away the Winston ult. The reason for potentially staying on Winston would be if you can win this fight with just the Winston ult, save the Grav for next fight, and then swap. So in a situation where Sinatra doesn't have Grav, that is, I think, a viable option. But when you have both of those ults, I think you just swap. You win with Sinatra's ult, you build on a shatter. I think that's far better. And
worst case scenario for Shock here too, because Gamsu charges Sinatra and kills him. And then so that's ult charge. So So Gamsu is already low, so it didn't really matter. But like the whole Sinatra is now going to be behind in Grav charge, and I assume Super's going to swap. Maybe he's got to swap. He's got to swap. Yeah, so they're going to be behind on Grav charge now, and Ding didn't get as much ult charge as I would have liked, but okay. So now Violet's swapping too, but because they're down there. So this is telling though, because they're getting like that was not as fast as it should have been, and now Shanghai is going to get to point for free. Whereas if it
wasn't as fast because they pushed with the Winston ult, they were chasing.
They should have just immediately turned around and gone back, and they had the opportunity to do that the fight before this when they bullied the DPS out. So And now because okay, so they don't actually cap, but it doesn't really matter. They're gonna rush with bomb. That's a really crappy bomb.
Yeah.
That's a dumpster bomb. I don't know what happened here. What on earth? Am I missing something? Who's over here?
I don't know. He probably thought that they were pivoting on that side with their backline, but
Okay.
I don't
Well,
know. That was really weird.
pardon the expression, but this is a Shanghai trigger. This is not high. This is too soon. Too soon to regress.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Ding is still really slow in his Sombra ult charge. But okay. Shock's still on the Moira. I guess, like, I don't know, like the longer these fights go, I guess it's like, well, I guess you got nothing else to work with now. But like again,
he went to swap and then he got called back. Probably it was probably should I station? I have just stay on it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I don't know if I'm gonna get trans or not. Might as well just stay on it. So like you've fully committed to this stupid play, so now you have to go through. But now Shock is, they've blown the bomb. They didn't get anything out of it. They don't have Grav. They don't have Shatter. I think the play here is you have to, you need, if you're Shock, you need to win with just Rally here. I think you need to win with just Rally here so that you go into the next fight and you still have, your Coalescence to force the EMP, and then you can maybe survive with beating it.
There's no chance to win with the Just Rally because Luffy has trance though, and he knows Snatcher doesn't have grab, so he can use it more liberally to farm up the.
That's true.
EMP.
Okay, but they are giving a lot of space. But they force trance? What causes Luffy to trance this? That is a really strange trance. You know what this tells me? I speak Chinese. Is Luffy Chinese? I don't know if Luffy's Chinese.
Korean.
Oh, he's Korean. Okay, so I can speak Korean now because I know what Luffy is saying to his team. He's saying, guys, push in aggressively with my trance. They don't have trance.
Trance dive.
But the problem is nobody's even low. Like, you can still push aggressively with trance and react. Like, Youngden's taking a little bit of damage, but...
maybe they used a bubble. Maybe you saw that they didn't have a bubble.
Right, but my point is, like, when you're, like, proactively trancing, you're still reactive. Like... You tell you because you don't want to take away your discordant damage until you absolutely have to. Like, let your team feed.
But at the same time, if you have a discord on super and they don't have a target bubble to remove it, and Sinatra doesn't have a grab, you can't really stop that momentum. There's no trance, there's nothing, so you can potentially burst him like I think they did, or at least get a beat in return. Maybe by time for the EMP, then there's no counter to the EMP. It's still like anytime you're proactive, you force out mistakes, which is what they did here. I didn't see the bubble usage, but potentially they saw that there was no bubble, and if there's no bubble, then it's Discord and Super. They can go for that play.
So I still stand by. I don't think it's optimal how it was done, but you're right. Being proactive covers. It wasn't perfect. Yeah, okay, it wasn't perfect, but they were still proactive. Yeah. They still made a play, so it worked.
Yeah, there's no bubble. He's discorded. He dies.
Yeah. And that's it. Like, and why isn't Coalescence saving the fight? What's wrong?
Yeah.
Yikes. And this is it too. So you have no answer for EMP anymore because you're walking this fight. Sinatra does have Grav, but they're swapping the stall picks.
No,
there's not going to be a clean fight. It's over. They have Grav.
Yeah.
They have EMP. They're barely going to be able to touch. Anybody who touches is going to get EMP'd, and it's done. If Sinatra had Grav there, that would have gone differently. But because he got picked in the fights previously, didn't happen.
Yeah. You needed someone to save Super there.
Yes.
So either the beat or a Grav, which wasn't on the board yet.
Okay.
Shanghai almost throws it by using Grav and EMP on a Hammond.
Jeez, Shanghai. But
it was unlosable.
Yeah, it really was. Okay. All right. So I guess to wrap this up, Shanghai came in with strange compositions, right? Not strange, but just not unorthodox compositions with the Sombra Goats with the DPS. They made it work, and a lot of San Francisco Shock, a lot of how Shock was winning these fights was just forcing Shanghai to make mistakes. I don't feel like they came into these fights, and that could be a strategy in of its own, and that's a good strategy in of its own, like we said, the whole being proactive. But I think with how Shock was handling their swaps, they were just assuming that they were going to win a fight without really okay, this makes sense for us to win the fight, and now we can win. This almost feels like a little bit, not disrespectful, but like they were relying on their ability to be good at X composition instead of actually making the swaps that made sense in that situation.
Yeah, I think they just wanted to play at a super high tempo, which Moira allows them to play at a super high tempo. But I do agree that they could have potentially found openings to swap it, especially on this last stage when they were on the Winston. I think that's definitely a spot where you go back and swap, and when they didn't, it kind of.
And kudos to Shanghai, like they did look good. The Pharah was brutal. They got a lot of value out of this Pharahs in those early fights. So I mean, it wasn't just like Shock through. The Shanghai did play this well for the most part. But
it still feels if you replay this map with sort of the same comps, that Shock still wins it like maybe 9 out of 10 times.
I would guess so as well. But anyway, it was interesting to see that the one map Shock lost. I guess that was kind of like the observation. So all right, Mineral,
that's control for you.
I really appreciate you coming on, man. I'm going to have to plug your stuff afterwards, chat. I'm gonna throw some of his. I'm gonna turn off the screen share.
Yep.
There you go. I'm going to put some of his social media in chat really quick. So you do VOD reviews. Like, what is your criteria for VOD reviews? Because I've watched them and they're really good. A little bit more high tier, obviously, like your 4.4, 4.3K, like tier 3 kind of stuff. So what's your criteria for VOD reviews? Do you do them for fun? Do you charge? Like, what's the plan? What's the deal?
Yeah, right now I'm doing it for fun and sort of for content's sake, for for educational purposes, to try and help grow my YouTube channel. But obviously there's been an increase in applications, and obviously I won't be able to do them for free. I've had to reduce from 3 maps to 2 maps to 1 map because there's a lot of people that want to do it. But yeah, obviously as the community grows, I'm probably not going to be able to do them for free. But right now, I'm still able to. But again, if there are people who end up paying for these sessions, then obviously they will also take priority. So.
Okay, awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, man. Hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. And chat, I hope you learned a lot. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was really fun. Thanks.
All right, have a good one.
This family. Have a good one.